Hey everyone, you're listening to the Simple Electronics Podcast. I'm your host, Dan from the Simple Electronics YouTube channel. And today is actually a special episode. This is the 2-year anniversary of the podcast. And I couldn't think of anybody better to share this anniversary with than probably the guest that's been on the most. Today's special guest is another maker. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm honored. And congratulations on 2 years of this thing.
2 whole freaking years. And probably if I put all the ad revenue together, I probably earned about $10.
All right. Well, I've listened to every single one of them. So I feel like I've contributed about 12 cents of that. So you're welcome.
You probably did, as long as you're not using an ad blocker.
Oh, well, 0 cents of that. No, I mainly listen to them on Pocket Cast. So I'm guessing you don't really get anything from that.
No, I don't. So my podcast host has the option of auto putting ads in, similar to YouTube's AdSense. But I think it is closed off to me because I'm Canadian. And even so, like, why would I want to make like 4 or 5 cents per listen at the most to upset my audience when I can just do an integrated ad and, make some actual money out of it?
Yeah, absolutely, totally agree. And these sponsors need to get on it. This is good content. They need to step up.
Speaking of which, this episode is brought to you by... I'm kidding. I wish. Oh, so how have you been?
I've been good, recovering a little bit from a little bit of an injury, but other than that, been doing pretty well.
Did you sprain a finger doing a coding marathon?
I did. I was really double clicking extra hard, but no, actually, a couple of weeks ago, I was riding. I guess maybe in a month and a half ago, I was riding my bike and just did something boneheaded. I thought a car was coming from the left side out of a driveway, and I looked just a little bit too long, and they had just put in a new median, and I smacked that curb and sent my big self over the handlebars and landed on the curb and hit exactly on my sciatic nerve. And you hear people talk about sciatica, and it just sounds like one of those kind of whiny things. It is unbelievably painful. Like, just, I mean, it is, it, I honestly can't describe how painful it is. And then I healed up and then accidentally banged it again about a week ago. And it is just, it's unreal. It's crazy.
So sorry, the first bail that was when you hit the curb. That was the first injury a little
Yeah, that
while
was the
ago.
first injury ago, and then I sort of just banged it and just hit that exact same spot and just triggered it again. And there's a nerve that basically runs from your lower spine almost down to your ankle, and it's the biggest nerve in your body, the sciatic nerve. And most people hurt it in some kind of back injury, but there's also a place just kind of below your butt cheek where if you hit it just right, I mean it just like cripples you, just knocks you down. And the weird thing about it is that I can stand and walk around all day long fine. I just can't sit or lay down. And when nighttime comes, that gets pretty rough. So
Brutal. And that's the first one when you hit the curb. That's when you destroyed your expensive forks. You have like carbon fiber forks.
yeah, I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. I was actually surprised. I was able to ride the bike home. I could tell it wasn't right, like it wasn't steering to the left very well. But I was able to ride it home. I've got really strong rims and stuff like that. But when I got it home and put the whole thing back together, there was, I mean, maybe a degree bend in the fork, and I had chipped my helmet a little bit. But stuff like that, especially with carbon fiber, you just can't tell. And when carbon fiber breaks, it breaks catastrophically and jaggedly. There's times when people will get in a minor accident with a carbon fiber bike and think it's okay, and then they'll be riding and hit a bump, and the carbon fiber will shatter and impale them and stuff like that. So you don't screw around with carbon fiber that's been in a wreck.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The whole deal with carbon fiber is it's supposed to deflect and then deflect back. So if you deflected it and it stayed a little bent, that means that the fibers are pulling away from the epoxy and it's done for.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with the bike helmet too. The bike helmet, I have one of those fancy MIPS helmets, which are not very expensive, but I highly recommend watching a video about how they work. But they're made for one impact, and they do the job. And the job is to keep your head and brain in place. But you know, once they take a hit, you should replace it. And actually, you were the one who pointed out. I think you were the one who asked me if I had cracked my helmet or anything like that. And I went back to the car, got it out, and sure enough, there was a chunk out of it. I had no idea I'd even hit my head at all until you asked me about that.
Do you watch Scotty from Strange Parts at all?
Yeah, and I knew he had some kind of head injury, but I don't remember the story.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not 100% sure because he stopped making super regular videos a couple years ago at this point. But I do know he bonked his head. I think it was in a factory tour in the USA. So take that
Mm.
as you will, go through all these Chinese factories and then, come back home and then get a catastrophic injury. Um, but on his channel, Strange Parts, and his second channel, specifically Stranger Parts, he's talking more and more about his concussion on that channel. And one of the head injury specialists was saying that helmets do not prevent concussions. It prevents you from cracking your skull, but
Right.
your brain is mobile inside of your
Hmm.
skull cavity. And a concussion is what happens when your brain comes and smacks the inside of your skull. And so, yeah, brain injuries are devastating. And if anyone here wants more information, you should definitely check out Strange Parts and Stranger Parts. It is actually very interesting, the stuff that he's going through.
Yeah, that's a shame, and yeah, and the MIPS is about as good as they have for bike helmets, but it is definitely not perfect. And I think we might have talked about this before, but that's one of the things where Florida has an option where if you have the right insurance, you don't need to have a motorcycle helmet, which people think is insane, and it kind of is. But the justification was basically the motorcycle helmet keeps you alive. So the insurance company winds up spending millions of dollars for you in the hospital with basically no quality of life, where if you weren't wearing a helmet you would die, but it would be less expensive and probably less painful, which is kind of a cruel way of thinking of it. But it is kind of justification because, yeah, the helmet does not prevent the brain injury. It just may keep you alive to live with it.
Yeah, I don't know if that's is that like verified, because there was the thing about the brace position in the aircraft that was a conspiracy theory that it would kill more people than allow them to survive. I'm not sure if I buy into those kinds of theories.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that one's verified, but obviously we can research that and leave something in the comments if I'm wrong on that. But at least that was the justification that I heard, I should say.
Well, if you're putting it out there, then the
Yeah,
comments will correct you.
yeah, yeah.
So it's kind of a
Absolute
self.
fact. I
Yeah,
heard it from Simple Electronics first. He's just backing off it now.
it's the another maker principle. It's that principle where that the best way to get the right information on the internet is say the wrong information. Yeah,
Exactly. It
pretty sure it's
works.
called the another maker principle.
Exactly.
So, electronics wise, what have you been up to? Because I have to answer for my lack of productivity. But before we do that, in order to raise watch time, what have you been up to?
I have been working on a couple major things. I've been working on the open buzzer system, which is something I sort of did on vacation. I was down in Aruba a couple of months ago, and I didn't want to do any real work, but I knew I'd have some kind of coding on my brain. So I developed this open source thing that's for game shows and for I think eventually it could be used for race timing, but essentially it starts off with a little WeMOS D1 mini ESP8266 shield, and that shield has a button and a buzzer and some places for LEDs and things like that. And it can interact with a whole bunch of other things. It can interact with a cloud server. It can interact with a another ESP8266. And so I built this just giant platform to handle all things race timing and game show buzzers. So that's been kind of my big Arduino project.
So, what when you say race timer, can you unpack that a little bit? And
Yeah.
and
So
buzzer, you'll have to go with the buzzer as well. So
sure.
one at a time, though.
All right, so if you think about it, let's put them together for a second. If you think about it, let's say that you're hosting a game show and you unlock the buzzers so that people can buzz in, and they click a button. You want to know which of the seven people buzzed in first, uh, and then possibly even the order that those people buzzed in. Well, that's not really much different than a race timer. You want to know, which lane got across the thing first, or and how long it took them and stuff like that. So the technology, as I was building it, like I realized the technology was basically exactly the same. You might change your starting logic a little bit, but my thought is for things like swimming and for relay races and schools and all that kind of stuff, it really doesn't matter if you're hitting a button or crossing a beam or even hitting an RFID thing at the end. You just need to know when it started and when it stopped. And so kind of mixing all those things together into this big open source platform.
And let me see if I understand. So you have sort of like basically an open source thing where you can set the amount of either racers or participants, right? The amount of people, and
Yep.
then you can set a condition for to light up the one who came in first type
Yeah.
thing, and then you can set a trigger either to a button or to breaking a beam or something like that. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah. So it's flexible. It can either do one of two things. It can either tell you who came in first, and it also tells you how long it took them just for the heck of it, since we know that, or it can tell you the order that they came in and the time. So that can be same thing. That could be buzzing in for a game show, or it could be for a race.
Interesting. And have you tested sort of like the latency on this? Like, is there any issues in that at all?
Um, slight differences. The one thing is, if you were doing for some kind of competition, Olympic level thing, that would be different. But the one thing that's kind of interesting is they are all going to basically have the same latency. So even if the timing isn't exact, like even if you wouldn't use it at a combine to record 40-yard dash times for something like a school, uh, it's kind of good enough is basically where it's at. Now you could, with injecting some timestamps and stuff like that, you basically could program all the latency because, uh, you know, they're all basically going through the same system. So the signal it's RF. So I mean, it's gonna travel at a fixed speed regardless.
Speed of light, roughly, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what kind of hardware do you need for this? Obviously, you need the ESP8266. You need anything else?
No, well, that's actually the cool thing. You can do it on ESP32 and ESP8266. You can use my shield, not use my shield. But the easiest way to do it is to get something like the WeMOS D1 Mini and use my shield. And then from there, I either have little Arduino controllers where they can talk to another Arduino. So the Arduino will light up and tell you who buzzed in first, and you can reset it and all that kind of stuff. Or they can talk to a cloud server. And so if you have internet access on all of them, you can click it and they'll go to a cloud server where you have like a full graphical user interface. So there's sound effects. So you can have when player one buzzes in, it could be a cow mooing. When player two buzzes in, it could be a cowboy yeehawing or whatever. There's just kind of unlimited options for stuff like that.
That's pretty neat. And you're saying you can run this offline, like you can have an Arduino light up physical lights as well, right?
Right. Yep.
Well, that's pretty neat. And sorry, is the video out for this or not yet?
So I did the overall, just the very basic thing about the shield. So it's kind of be four parts. I did a video about the shield itself, and then I did another video that doesn't seem related, but I did a video called "How to Install User Spice," and the whole cloud platform runs on my software User Spice. So I thought, rather than spending 5 minutes of a video explaining to people how to install User Spice, I made a separate video explaining that process that I can just point people to. And then the next video that I'm getting ready to film is basically an explanation of the whole cloud server. This is all the different things it can do. You can use my free. I set up an openbuzzer.org .com. I actually forget which one. I think I have both. But I set up an Open Buzzer website where people can use it on my cloud server, or they can use it on their own cloud server if you have like a GoDaddy account or something like that. Or you can install it on a Raspberry Pi and you don't have to have any kind of cloud server.
.org doesn't work, but
Okay,
.com does
.com.
work.
Okay, thanks.
So you need to buy it before the podcast goes
I
live.
think I have it, but I'm not. I should point it over there just in case.
There we go.
I buy
Um,
domains. It's a problem. Like when I think of these ideas, I buy domains and then I'm stuck paying for them. It's a serious illness.
I have a couple of domains as well, and I only have a few standing websites. And as much as I want to whip myself into shape, I just cannot get myself
Yeah,
to work on them. It sucks.
I understand. Totally understand.
Yeah, it is what it is. I just these days, like I think I've been mentally checked out for the last 2 weeks, for whatever reason. It's like the anxiety of making videos is making me not able to make videos, which is growing the anxiety, and so
It's a
that's been a
thing.
lot of fun.
It really is. And I mean, like I think about that. I spent again. I did it for the just sort of the exercise of my brain, but I spent most of my free time. I woke up at 4 in the morning on vacation because I wake up at 4 in the morning when I'm not on vacation. So I mean, every morning I'm coding this extremely elaborate thing for 300 people to view it, and but I think overall the platform has real potential. Like I've met several people in person who've ordered the PCBs, and one guy ordered 50 of them, and he's making a whole game show platform that he's going to travel around with. And so the people who've used it really like it, but it'll take a little bit of time to get it out there.
I have never thought that I would be able to write software that people would want to use. But just recently, if I can plug them, freecodecamp.org, they have YouTube videos. They just re-released. They had one 4 years ago that I tried to watch, but they just made a new version of learning Python for very beginners. And just skimming through it on my lunch break at work the other day, it seems like exactly what I needed to learn. It's very, very basic, and they're not. First of all, there's two approaches I've seen people do. One is they teach you concepts, and the other one is they teach you projects. And to me, it doesn't work either way because I kind of need them both together. So this one here is that they are teaching the concepts by teaching a project. So they're at the very start, they're like, yeah, we're going to make a rock paper scissors game. But the first thing they do is they say, oh, let me just show you the print command. So they say, my choice, and they make a variable, my choice equals scissors, and then they say print my choice. And so they're explaining variables and print command, but at the same time, we're building up to a video game. And they're like, okay, well, now my choice, we want the person, the user, to make a choice. So now this is this concept, and then they delete that line and they rewrite it. It's actually really well made. So if anyone is listening to this and wants a crash course on Python, I think it's a couple hours long, 4 hours, 4.5 hours long, but it seems to be the entire thing. I would highly recommend that.
I love Free Code Camp. They make some great stuff. They're awesome. Highly recommend. Second that.
So yeah, get to it. And at some point, I will get to it. But first, I have to make some videos. And the thing is, I've got a pile of videos to make, and I have not really been recording anything except for mailbags. I'm just clearing through the mail as it comes through. But I have been working on a massive project, and without revealing what it is, can you tell people what you think of it? Because I sent you photos,
Is this the one that was
the
I
3D
saw today?
printed one.
Okay, yeah. It's huge. It's huge. It's
in pure Floridian.
pure Floridian. It's huge. I love it. Like it's up my alley. It's something I think is really cool. Uh yeah, I think your
So
viewers will be illuminated.
so here, I'll have a question for you, but you'll have to answer in lieu of the audience. So,
Okay.
what's the biggest LED size you think you can commercially order?
Huh. I mean, the biggest ones I have, and I just ordered a bunch more of them, are 10 millimeters. I'm sure there's bigger ones, but 10 mil is the biggest I've ever ordered myself.
That is the biggest I can find as well. So 10 millimeter, and I have a couple. I have like the RGB ones, and they are white frosted, like diffused. And you cannot individually control them, but you can individually control the channels. But my thought, and I actually was talking to Clarissa about Clarissa from I
Make it
never
fake it.
remember if it's Fake It or
Fake
Make It
it.
and or Make It and
Yeah.
Fake It, which unfortunately she's closed down the channel. She's leaving it live, but she's not making any more videos. But we were talking about designing a massive LED, and I said, "Yeah, I'll design that." But it's just a little bit more complex because it has to be hollow, so we could put LEDs in it. And she said, "Wait, what? There's going to be LEDs in it?" And I said, "Of course. If you design a giant LED, it's got to emit light. That, in my opinion, right?"
Exactly.
And so, because of a chain of events that started with Bit Looney and my God,
Brian.
Brian Locke
Mhm.
doing a live stream together, playing with WLED, or is it WLED? Not sure. Uh, and I didn't even know this existed, but in case anybody doesn't know, WLED is like this software that you go to their website, you plug in an ESP32 or an ESP8266, and you can use your web browser to install WLED to the ESP, and it connects to your Wi-Fi, and you can control the colors of WS28112Bs, or like neopixels, with their software, and either your phone or web browser or whatever. So it's like super easy mode to control LEDs, and it has massively powerful effects and whatever. So when I was like, wait, I can control a bunch of neopixels without coding anything. Not only that, but you can do it without even the Arduino IDE. I was like, I'm on board. And so I designed this PCB, which is a video that's coming soon if I can get my head out of my butt, that will power a 100 millimeter in diameter LED. And this 100
Yeah.
millimeter LED is made out of translucent PETG, and it has silver legs, and it has solder fillets, and it has a base, and it's USB powered. And so this 100 millimeter LED is going to be a lamp, that you can control with all sorts of cool effects, including candle flickers, including like
Wow.
unicorn puke, all of this stuff. And let me tell you, folks, I don't think I've ever been prouder of something that I've designed. It freaking works.
That's awesome. How many LEDs are in it? How many WS2812Bs?
16, I believe.
And you didn't just use a standard like 16 ring. You actually made a PCB for it.
I made a PCB for bare WS28112s, which
Yeah.
I'm not sure was the right move, but I just needed the ring a specific
Yeah.
size. So I'm not sure it was the right move, and the reason is, for the first time, I have killed components while soldering.
Really?
I killed 2 neopixels while hand soldering them on.
Not heat plate, hand soldering. Interesting.
Yeah, it has to be hand solder because I forgot to order a stencil.
Okay.
So, and
And
plus, I made the pads a little bit bigger so that they can be hand soldered, because I figured most of the audience are going to want to hand solder.
mhm.
But yeah, uh, basically, I have killed 2 of them, and thankfully I had my oscilloscope on hand, or else I wouldn't have seen, because the signal was going into an LED, like one of the neopixels, and it was coming out all garbled.
Hmm.
So if you put the multimeter on the data line, you would have seen it would have had a voltage between 0 and 5, saying that something is getting through. But without the multimeter, you wouldn't have seen. Without the oscilloscope, you wouldn't have seen that the edges were all like distorted.
Yeah. I'm really learning how to appreciate the oscilloscope organically. When I first got mine, I was just always thinking I was going to blow it up. In fact, I bought one and then I just returned it. It was like a $500 4-channel one. I returned it because I was like, this is just too much for me. Like I'm not gonna do this thing justice. And then somebody gave me a 2-channel one, and I use it enough that I really wish I would have kept the 4-channel. Primarily because it had web interface so I could capture and stuff like that. But just side note, but the LED is impressive. The solder fillets, I think, really make it. I think that just like adds that one extra little touch to it. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I
The
have.
sorry, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, the
I,
LED rings used to be one of those things that were so cheap. I used to, when I lived in Alaska, I would order them. I mean, they were under $1, and then all of a sudden, even before the chip shortage, they just went way up in price. And because I had an idea of a project I wanted to make out of a whole bunch of LED rings, and it just became cost prohibitive.
that's strange, huh? Because they are quite expensive now. And I do remember you used to be able to get nested rings, like basically all the sizes,
Yeah,
and it used to be like $4 for like 6 rings or something.
yeah. Well, and I ran a camp, and what I wanted to do with it is I wanted to, and it was going to be a royal pain in the butt to write the software, but basically what I wanted to do is I would build these giant interactive wall games, and one of the ones I wanted to do was Connect Four, where you would basically walk. You would walk over there and you'd push a button on the row that you wanted to drop your chip, and the whole thing was going to be LED rings. And so your red chip would just drop down until it landed on top of, let's say, the blue chip. And then I was going to make the thing where when you slid the thing, they all fell down like they were, obviously all lights, but it gave it the effect that they were all falling down. And I had made that sort of prototyped it with like a single row, and it was really really cool. But then all of a sudden the price of this thing spiked, and it was just became cost prohibitive to make that many of them.
Yeah, so here I checked out. So if I wanted a 16 LED ring,
Mm-hmm.
it would have been 48 millimeters in diameter, and I
Mm-hmm.
could have went for a 35 LED ring. It would have been 96 millimeters in the diameter, which is just about the right size, but it would have cost nearly $10.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I also think I think 35 is too many. You don't
Yep.
need that many. WLED can easily handle. I mean, I've tried it up to 256, and it works just fine. But the thing is that I don't think you need that many for an ambient, like an ambiance light. And plus,
Right.
if you run them too hard, they're gonna get too hot, and they're gonna melt your PETG. Like,
Yeah.
it's just gonna melt. So yeah, they're expensive. But anyways, this is my thing. I learned a lot of stuff in KiCad doing this. I learned how to rotate the footprints around the center point of a circle. That was a pain in the butt. Uh, probably there's probably a plug-in to do it better, but yeah, the way it was, not great. I learned how to modify footprints to sort of make repetitious tasks easier. I made the footprint with a long ground pin so that I could put a via through it and have the ground on the bottom.
Mm.
Because the thing is, even though you spread out 16 in a circle, your traces are still stuck to 90 degrees, 120 90, yeah, basically right angles plus the 45s. So for the LED number, 1, that's fine because it's completely horizontal. But then number 2 is off at a canted angle, and then the traces look super weird, and so it's not great.
So I wonder, is that why they're spaced out as far as they are on those LED rings, because of the way they have to run the traces?
Um, no, I don't think so. I think it's just so they'd be cheaper.
Okay.
I would think that's it. But like honestly, as the having them run like that is not too bad if you're just powering the LEDs. But the thing is, I have to also bring a data line, and I have to bring power and ground to the micro, which is sitting in the middle.
Mm.
And so that's why I couldn't just make a ring of like power and ground pores. But even so, like doing a circular ring in KiCad is not simple. It's kind of a pain in the butt. They're very, like when I was talking to Steph Piper about her design stuff, because she makes artsy PCBs. KiCad was not designed with graphics in mind. They were not designed with like the look of the PCB in mind. It's really was designed to make PCBs that'll be inside of products, not something that acts as a front plate or whatever. So that's my little pot shots at KiCad. And again, if I was good at programming, I would be helping with that. That's the goal one day, is to be actually useful instead of just complaining.
I forget, did she say she did actually design those awesome kits in KiCad though, right?
I believe so. I think
Yeah.
so. It was either a KiCad or Eagle, which is
Okay.
no better. But what she was doing is she was bringing in the layers from a SVG software, Inkscape, I believe she was
Okay.
using. So
It,
yeah, you could do it like that, but then you're not guaranteed you're going to line everything up properly. And you also have to do things by measurement. So if you have, like, for example, you need an outside track and then you need an inside track, well, then you have to do your own math to figure out the pixel length that you need it and then the millimeter length that you need it. It's not simple, basically.
yeah. Yeah, and it's so impressive. Like it's so cool to, for one thing, to listen to your podcast, just getting insight from people who do things at just next level. I mean, that's just it is so ridiculous. As somebody who struggled mightily to design that one shield that I've done, it's I mean to see what she's doing is just mind blowing and it's just really really cool.
I know. And this is what, like, I know I've told you this before, but this is what gives me, like, this is part of what gives me anxiety reaching out to people, because I look at people doing such awesome things and I keep thinking, like, why would they want to come on to this pokey little show? Like Steph, Steph could easily get a job in like a place like Adafruit, right? They would easily hire someone like her to design PCBs like that. It's literally a work of art, but she chooses to do it for herself. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think about like I get jealous about all the conversations you've had with all these all stars in the industries, and I think about it. Well, you know, you did all this work for it, so at least I get to sit back and enjoy it with no work. So that's pretty cool.
Start a podcast. You get to talk to people that you have no business talking
Yeah,
to.
so much work.
It is a little bit of work. I mean, I've streamlined my stuff down throughout the 2 years that it's been running. Like, using Zencaster is a lot better from where we started. If you remember those first episodes of you
Recording it in
capturing,
Audacity.
yeah, you capturing your side, I'll capture my side. It becomes very difficult when you have people who are not technologically inclined to ask them to record on their end, like even Zencaster, which is very simple. Um, to first of all, I have to make sure the person has access to Chrome or to Edge, because those are the only two browsers that work with Zencaster. And then I have to make sure that they know how to allow permissions to their microphone, and it becomes a whole thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not calling anybody out. I'm not saying any one of my guests were technologically inept, and even if they were, I'm not going to say.
Well, I can go ahead and say I think this is the fourth time that I've been on the podcast, and literally every time I forgot I needed headphones until right before the podcast. So I was scrambling around finding extension cables and things like that. So I'll call myself out on being techno, if not illiterate, just techno dense on this.
You are in the upper 50%,
I
I would say.
appreciate that.
There are some people that it would surprise you when you watch their content to see how computer non-savvy they are. And some of them were computer savvy and never bothered to upgrade their rigs, and so they're used to something far older than what, like, I mean, if you think about it, all these apps that run in your browser, that's a fairly recent thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, I remember when I was a kid, everything was an executable. You had to download an executable for anything you wanted to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, I mean, everything is done in the browser. It's fantastic. It's usually fantastic.
Yeah, sometimes less. I mean, sometimes I wish that things would be simpler, and sometimes I wish that things would be just a little bit more complex. Like, for example, I still rage at Discord not letting me resize the window to whatever size I want. Like, I don't know if you have Discord open, but
I do.
try shrinking the window down to, like, like a small sliver. It don't let you, and it's like, excuse me, this is my computer.
Oh
I
yeah,
make the
half
rules
half
here.
screen. Yeah, that's funny.
Such a pain in the butt. And I have my my text mode set to compact because
Yeah.
I don't like scrolling infinitely. But, like, still I can only, like, yeah, I can't freaking close it, and I can't, like, remove, for example, like, there's the channels,
Yeah.
like, let's say in the Brian Locke's thing, you can't remove the channels away from the side to take less space. It just will not let you. So it's so frustrating when software devs don't let me do the most basic of customization.
Yeah. And they say it's free. Suck it up.
Yeah, well, and we know it's not free because they're just taking all my freaking data
Yeah.
and then
You if
channeling it through the great firewall.
you are the product.
I know. At least I try to be as shitty of a product as I can.
That's right.
Hope they kept the receipt on that one. So yeah, the LED video has to happen at some point. But then I'm thinking like I have nowhere to get some really nice B-roll footage because WLED works over Wi-Fi, and so I'm not sure if I set it to an effect and then I bring it outside of the Wi-Fi range and plug it in, will it still retain the last effect? It's
Mm.
all these things I haven't tried yet, and all these reasons why I need to be able to code my own stuff.
Can you power it with a USB battery bank?
You absolutely can.
Yeah, because that might
I'm
be your best bet. Um,
Yeah, I'm running a USB cable through. So I've designed my PCB to line up with the legs, and the legs are hollow. So, and the base is hollow. So you basically run an old USB cable, which we all have laying around. Um, you solder it to the board. There's an extra pin too, just in case you want to have a separate LED matrix elsewhere. You can
mm,
also run a cable down the other leg and plug a second lamp, for example.
that's fantastic.
And yeah, so it runs down the leg, down the base, and out some cutouts on the side.
So when you say a second one, hold on, are you saying like that's the DI, like the DO and DI? So you could actually, I mean, it doesn't have to just be a second; it could be a second, third, fourth.
Exactly. That's
So you can
exactly it.
make a strip of these things.
You can't. So you can make a NeoPixel strip out of the NeoPixels that are inside these LEDs, and theoretically, yes, you can have like all of these sitting in like if you could just imagine a round dinner table. You can, if you had the capabilities of printing a dome big enough, you could make an LED out of these individual LEDs. Yes.
Sounds like we're gonna have to talk to Evan Miranda about this.
I've yeah. I'm not saying I shouldn't have said that, but yeah, I have contacted multiple people who have never contacted me back. But Ivan, if you're listening, hit me up,
Ivan, that's
man.
it. Yeah, that'd be awesome. I mean, he's got to light the tank up somehow. I mean, yeah.
I mean, yeah, for sure. Can make headlights out of it, or I don't know.
That's awesome.
Freaking Ivan, that guy is like I sometimes lose track of channels because I go into other rabbit holes. But like the other day, he put out like a self-built CNC, and I'm like, is this like number 4 or something? Like, there's been a few.
Yeah,
He's just like I don't know. He's like a productivity beast.
I'm proud that I've actually been. So I have been using my 3D printer a lot, which is kind of funny because I went through this stretch where I just absolutely hated the thing, but I've been printing a lot lately, and so. But I just think about how much filament a guy like him goes through at that place. Like it has to be mind-boggling.
He must have filament sponsors.
Yeah, I'm sure.
He's got to. I have a Tron. I never know if it's Tron XY or Tron C, but it's the S5A. So it's a 330 by 330 by 330 Core XY machine, and it was printing like garbage for a while because I bought it used under $200, and whoever put it together must have been wasted that day because it was crooked. So it was printing in parallelograms, and that was a problem because I do mostly mechanical prints where stuff needs to stick like fit together. And so I finally got fed up the other day, and while I was listening to probably the H3 podcast, I ripped it apart and I trued it and made it more square, and now it seems to be printing a lot better. But since then, I've been able to print double the speed because now I have 2 working machines. So
Nice.
it's been going pretty well.
I talked to a Filament sponsor one time. I don't know. I think I told you about this. There was a I'll just go ahead and name them Sunlu Filaments. They're on Amazon and stuff like that. But they're a company out of Asia, and whoever does their marketing is just kind of a pretty funny guy. I don't know if I've seen it on Instagram or Facebook or something like that, where they just have videos of them like knocking over boxes of filaments and stuff like that. But he's kind of like this really slick guy. And normally when we get these sponsorships, like people will send us something for free and tell us to make a video whenever, and it's usually pretty low key. Like half the time I don't even know if they ever watch the videos that I make, stuff like that. But this guy, like, he just kept coming back to me. He's like, now I'm going to need to make sure that you can move a lot of filament. Can you move a lot of filament? Because if you can't move a lot of filament, then I don't know that we can work together. And I'm just like, I mean, my goal in life is not to move a lot of filament. And I was like, it's really not worth all these conversations for a $20 roll of filament. But it was just really funny, like super intense. But I did buy some of their filament off Amazon the other day, and it works pretty good.
I get to this point with these sponsors. I'm like, look, either you're sending this purposefully to me, and therefore you have watched my videos, and therefore you believe in what I'm doing here, or you're just spamming everyone you can reach and hoping for replies, in which case I don't think we're a good match. And,
Yeah.
that's kind of the thing. I had a sponsor lined up for the podcast, which would have absolutely turned my financial situation from sheer terror half the year to relative comfort the other half. It would have turned that into relative comfort all year round, with some periods of actually being able to save up money instead of like money in, money out. But the thing is, they were incessant. They were like, what's your demographics? And I send them all my information, and they're like, who's going to be your next guest? And I'm like, dude, I don't even know what's for dinner tomorrow. You can't ask me what my next guest is. And I said, it doesn't matter, because sometimes there's guests that are little known, like Steph Piper, where the episode does really well because she's super interesting. And just because she has a relatively small social media following compared to Dave Jones, for example, doesn't mean that she gets 1/10 of the views. Like that's not how any of this works. Like, she is capable of just as interesting conversations as the big channels, and that's why her episode does nearly as well, like without someone like Dave Jones telling people to go listen.
Yeah.
And so they don't get that, and I'm like, you know what, I don't know if we can do this. And then they say stuff like, well, we want to buy 12 months ahead of time. And I'm like, great. And they're like, give us a discount. And I'm like, okay. So I knocked like $50 off of each episode. And they're like, no, we were thinking more of 50% off each episode. And it's like, come on, man.
Yeah.
You can't.
It's so crazy. The variance in the sponsorships is just so unbelievable. I had one. Since I'm outing sponsors, I had one. There was a oak and some. I always forget. It's two words made up, like oak and arrow or something like that. Air compressor that you've seen lately. There've been a lot of the techie YouTubers have been doing videos on it, and the videos have come off as just a straight up commercial. And the reason for that is these people, like, they had some former Microsoft people and stuff, and so they sent talking points and all this stuff. And they not only did they send talking points, but they went from, hey, we're going to send you a compressor, do a review on it, like it has to be out by this date, it's all we ask, to, hey, like, we need a preview of it 6 days early so that we can green light it and say that you can go forward with this, to, hey, you're now officially a brand ambassador for Oak and Arrow air compressors. I'm like, I ain't a brand anything. Like, I'm making a video of this thing, and it turned out like the compressor was it was a little tiny portable compressor made to keep in your car, but it couldn't be stored at above 115 Fahrenheit or something, which is basically 70 degrees, in a car can be 115 inside the car. So it's you couldn't keep it in the car in anything more than a spring day without it risking it bursting into flames. And then you use it and it gets super hot, and just, I literally have no idea why anybody would go on Kickstarter and pay $150 for an air compressor. I just don't get it. Like when you could buy a Ryobi one for $30. So it's just a real weird interactions with some of these people.
In case anybody's wondering, a car tire uses quite a bit less pressure than a bike tire. And so the best bet is to keep a bike pump in your car.
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to take you a little bit longer to pump it up than a bike tire. There's more volume, but you only need to go up to 30 psi. So you're not going to be huffing and puffing by the time you're up to 30 psi. Unlike on a bike, I mean, and you can correct me because you're the bike guy, but I think a road bike can take up to like 120 psi or something.
Yeah, I usually run mine around 105, something like that, and that's where the ones that are like this style. But I mean, Ryobi, and I did a cheap one that cost it was something like $30 with the battery. Some of these new ones, you set the pressure and it'll just turn itself off. So I'll hook it up to my tire and let it blow up to 105 psi while I'm putting my shoes on, stuff like that. It's great. And it can also do a car tire. But
Yeah,
this particular one, when it ran, the air coming out of it got so hot that you actually couldn't touch the hose after you were done filling up a car tire because the thing got that hot.
I think it's lithium batteries have been a great advance, but not everything needs a battery.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just enough's enough, right? We don't have to like. I understand that it is convenient to have like a compressor to blow up your tires, but if you're someone like me who's not serious about biking, you're going to be charging the battery every time you want to blow up your tires because I think I only put air in my tires like twice a year. You
Yeah, I mean
know?
the ones that have a 12 volt, either your car has 12 volts in the front and back, or they've got 12 volts and enough cord to get anywhere to the four corners is really what you need. I'm the same way. Like if I kept that thing, I'm just gonna pull the battery out of it and just it charges off a USB. So I'll just plug and it can charge while it's running. So I'll just go ahead and ditch the battery altogether.
Yeah, and then you probably have a more useful tool overall.
Exactly.
It just
And
is
again,
what
I
it
don't
is.
get who gets that excited about a small air compressor that they wanna go on Kickstarter and hope that it comes in one day.
I don't know. I feel like there's some people who are just like you know when like a Kickstarter has like a massive failure and then people can be like, "Oh, that was me, man. I was there. I invested in that." Like I think people just want the story to tell.
Yeah.
I don't think they actually want the compressor.
Have you ever gotten anything from one?
I've gotten yes. Long story short, the wife and I had traveled to New York City, and in New York City, we were doing couch surfing. So basically, you stay on people's couches for free, and the idea is when you get back home, then you offer your couch for free, and so on and so on. One of the people we stayed with in Midtown Manhattan, she was big on supporting Kickstarters. That's the first place I've ever heard of Kickstarter. And at the time I was working and, actually had cash coming in like full time. And so I went on Kickstarter when we got home and I saw there was this company that was working on what I thought was a good idea, which is remote phosphor lighting. So some of you may know if you look straight down the barrel of an LED, if it's a white LED, it won't look white, it'll be yellow. And that's because white LEDs do not exist. You have to use a blue LED of a certain frequency, and it excites a layer of phosphor, which is the yellow, and the phosphor will emit a light. And so, what this company had done is they, instead of having the under cabinet lights or like light bars in general with like LED spots, and don't forget this was like 10 years ago or more, they had blue LEDs in an aluminum housing with a strip of phosphor. And so the LEDs would backlight the phosphor, and then the
Hmm.
phosphor would glow. So you would get even lighting from LEDs. You would get like like a continuous source of light without having the multiple shadows that you see from individual LEDs. And so I invested, quote unquote. I think I sent them $100, and they sent me 2 units. It took a very long time because they did their own, or some Chinese company to do the extrusions, and then they did their own molding and casting for the end pieces. They had specific connectors and wires and stuff like that. But I do have the Klauf light bars, and until I did my LED panels, my video lights from PCBWay, that's what was like doing the fill lighting on my set, basically.
So
So
when you say
now,
light bars, were these vehicle light bars? Were they designed that way, or were they?
no,
Okay.
they're more like, I would say powerful under cabinet light is the closest analog. It's like a 2-inch by 4-inch by 12-inch fixture, and then it's probably only 1-inch wide by 12-inch long sort of light strip. I should probably make a video on this because I never thought of making videos on it because it was always lighting my videos. But it's nothing. Anyways, I thought it was special, but it turns out it's nothing special because every single freaking LED uses phosphor. The important part was that the phosphor was further away from the LED, so you get more even lighting, but they're not super bright. They're not super great.
Hmm.
But yeah, they're called Klauf, Klauf. I'm going to actually just check. AUF, Klauf light bar. Hey, look, Google auto completed it. 2013, there is an article about them. So yeah, it's been a while.
Hmm.
Hey, and there's still a Kickstarter from 20 something.
How much did they raise?
50 grand.
Well, okay.
Interesting. Yeah, but
Yeah.
they're a German thing. Yeah, this is exactly what I have. If you Google it, Klauf. Actually, I can send you I'll send you it in the chat here.
Okay.
So you can take a look what it looks like, and that's exactly what I have. I drilled into mine because they don't have any hard mounting points, so I drilled and tapped holes for M3 bolts, and that's what's literally been sitting on top of my shooting area for the longest time
Hmm.
until I made my own panels.
Very cool.
And they come with little connectors that go in between. That you see there's like a three hole. It's like a Mickey Mouse plug, but they made their own. You can't just use a regular Mickey Mouse plug.
Yeah.
It's like it's cool. Like it's cool, but in the end, I don't think I would have, like, knowing what I know now, I don't think I would have spent the money. Yeah, I got the $100 24-inch chain.
I backed the Sinden light gun. That it's the deal is like the Nintendo light gun and stuff like that. You can't use those on LCD TVs or any kind of flat panel TVs. They need the old CRTs, and so there's been a couple of different projects to try to make some kind of modern light gun, and I got the Sinden one, and it works pretty well, but it's a lot of fiddling. Like they don't want to just give you a thing that has all these copyrighted games and stuff on there, so you pretty much have to figure out how to make it work on a game by game basis, and it's a lot of work for what it is. So I don't know.
Can I be honest here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Duck Hunt wasn't that great.
It really wasn't. That's the thing. Like you have the nostalgia for that kind of stuff, and a lot of times it wasn't as good as you remembered. It is kind of cool. There's a lot of games like Mad Dog McCree and stuff like that that used to cost $1 at a time, which when I was a kid, that's a lot of money. I grew up in the quarter arcade days, and so to spend $1 to play an arcade game was just insane. And you wouldn't get that far in that game. So to be able to play that in my office is pretty cool, but it's it's got limited value in my opinion.
I wonder why a modern interpretation of the original way the light gun used to work wouldn't be possible, because all it was is it threw the screen white, and then it threw the screen black with a white square where the duck was, and the elements in the gun, the lenses in the gun, made it so only a small portion of the TV was being looked at, and basically an LDR inside, or a photodiode, one of the two, inside the gun. If it was lit up, that means you hit the duck, and if it wasn't, that means you were on the black portion of the screen. And so I don't see the complexity in making the gun, but I definitely see the complexity in getting it to work with an emulator, which was never really designed to work with light guns.
Yeah. I don't know. I've read a few times. It's been a while, but it basically is generally agreed that it's not the same. There's been hacky type ways to use like Wiimote type technology from the Nintendo Wii and all kinds of things like that. But there's people pretty much agree it just doesn't work the same. And now they're basically using cameras and stuff like that. So when you were doing the setup for this thing, you can actually see your own screen. It's a webcam inside the thing, and there's just a lot of things going on in there. It's a pretty complicated device, and the one I have has force feedback and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of cool. But it's like a solenoid type force feedback, so it is possible that if you're in automatic, you can actually like deplete the capacitor's ability to recharge the thing slightly. So even that's a little bit of a bummer.
Interesting. I'm looking for a retro console at the moment. I've been playing Pokemon on my phone while going to bed because I grew up with Pokemon Red and Blue. That's probably way after your time,
It is.
but I mean
I
you know
know
what
it
it
is.
is.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I've been playing Pokemon before going to bed, and I'm not liking the tap on your screen type controls.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went on AliExpress looking for a controller that I can use with my phone. That's how this started because I think Android has enough capability that it can run emulators pretty well. But then you look at a decent quality controller that's Bluetooth for your phone, and it's like $40. And what else is $40 is a dedicated retro console. But then I'm looking at this $40 retro console and I'm thinking, well, if I spend $60, which is a little bit more, then I can play the next generation up from what I was intending to play. But if I pay another $40, then you're at $100, then I can play up to like PlayStation 1 games. Then you read the reviews, and the PlayStation 1 games are a bit laggy, and so are the Nintendo 64 games. So then you go another $50 up, and then you're at 150, and then you can play PlayStation 1 and N64 decently, but then a little bit more, another $20 or so, then you can play Dreamcast games, and it's just like the next step up from that is a Windows machine basically, and then I'm thinking like, my God, at that point I might as well get a Steam Deck. And then I'm like, oh, maybe, okay, screw it. It's too much money. So what I'll do is I'll get a Raspberry Pi 3, which I have here. A viewer sent it to me. And then get a screen and then some buttons, and I'll just make my own portable console. But a 7-inch IPS display is $100. So it's like, there's no way to win here. It always snowballs out of freaking control.
There is one option that it's expensive now, or it's crazy expensive now because of the chip shortage. But have you heard of the Mister FPGA?
No?
So it started off as something. The ST in the middle started for Atari ST, which I believe is the 16-bit Atari computer. But essentially, what there's been this entire culture that's come up around this relatively cheap FPGA board. So an FPGA, for those of you that don't know, is basically just real simply, you can basically make your own CPU with software. And so what happens is it's not emulation. And this is the difference. Like when you run on a Raspberry Pi or any of those Chinese consoles, they are emulating the Nintendo 64 in software, which is why even a modern computer can have a hard time simulating what a actual piece of hardware did 20 years ago. But with the Mr. FPGA, you actually make the system on the chip, and it's quick. You just switch from it. You can switch from being something like an old Atari 2600 to a PlayStation 2 to an Atari 16-bit or whatever, and it basically reconfigures the thing to make a one-to-one compatible version, and you're no longer actually emulating. You're essentially running native code, and they can do some ridiculous stuff. And it was $200 to $300. With the chip shortage, they've gone up to $600-700, which is just ridiculous. But if they come back down, I mean, it's an amazing device, and there's an amazing ecosystem around it.
Where do you buy this, or what's the search terms to buy it?
It's just
Hey,
MISTER FPGA.
okay.
And
And
yeah, there's you probably easiest to find them on eBay right now for $600, but ultimately they should be around $300. And there's a few add-ons you can decide, like, do you want an HDMI output or do you want a SCART output? And it's sort of a modular thing where you can uh, add different RAM modules and stuff like that to extend it to be able to do other things. But it's very, very cool, and it's very cool how it works. It's a really cool use of the FPGA, because part of the things that people say when you're running the emulation, like they miss some of the artifacting and they miss the sound is close but it's not right, or there's input lag and stuff like that. But with this, there's essentially none of that,
yeah,
because you're running on a real hardware.
so it's literally $600 Canadian. However, the Steam Deck is $500 Canadian, and that has like a modern Ryzen processor inside. Yeah, $500 Canadian, and it's delivering in Q4 2022. Now that's for the 64 gig eMMC one, but for $660, that's the one with the NVMe SSD, has a carrying case and everything. And I would be more inclined to get that over, because this FPGA, sure, it has probably the authentic experience, but this can play Steam games as well.
Right. Yeah. And again, this is double. It's going for double MSRP right now. So you're not looking at the real price for it. And again, you're not as much into the retro stuff as some other people are. And so, I mean, if you're looking primarily for retro stuff, it's the most authentic way to do it. But yeah,
Oh, but
emulation on Pi 4 is fantastic. Like, I have emulators and they're great.
there's no screen on this. Do you have to plug this into a TV, the
Yeah. You
Mr.
just plug it
FPGA?
into a TV. Yeah.
Yeah. So that wouldn't solve my
Yeah.
my
It's not portable.
portable. Damn. So yeah, this Steam Deck is an absolute
It's a
ridiculous
steal.
value, but I
They
can't.
have to be subsidizing it I mean, they
Oh
have
yeah,
to be subsidizing it by hundreds.
100%. It's just I cannot justify $700 right now.
Yeah.
There isn't a chance in hell I can justify $700 unless like a sponsor sponsored me,
Yeah.
a video where I could tie in like a review of it or something. There's just no way.
I reviewed one of those portable game system things. I honestly can't remember the brand name of it, but Banggood sent it to me, and I don't play it at home, but it's one of those things we always take when we travel, and it's really good. It's I mean, probably a 3.5 4-inch screen type deal, and will run everything up to PS1 so, a Nintendo 64 so. But I put a 256 gig card in, and it's pretty fun. My wife likes it probably more than I do, but yeah, it's a something 351, Emelec 351, something like that.
Is it Ambernick or something like that?
Ambernick, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's the one. That's one of the ones I was looking at. But they're $140 or so.
Yeah.
And again, that's decent price, but screen is small, and I don't know if you can play. So the thing is, I want to play Nintendo DS games,
Mm.
the handheld DS, and apparently you have to go up to that level, the one that you have, in order to play them. So that price point in order to play them. So yeah, I'm
You might
just
need to talk to our Banggood overlord, see if they can get you a review unit.
I have, but they do not. They don't. They honestly they don't reply to emails anymore.
Should
They're
we talk about how Banggood goes? Have you talked about how that works overall?
no, not really. We can talk about it. Sure.
It's so essentially, you see a lot of videos sponsored by Banggood on YouTube, and you sort of get a rep, and it's very funny because you are clearly either in their graces or not in their graces, and some of it may have to do with how your videos do, and some of it may have to do with with just what kind of mood they're in that day. And so essentially what will happen is they'll either contact you and say, hey, we have these 10 products, do you want to pick 3 or 4 of them? Or for a while they were telling me, and I think you, to just go on the site and tell them what you wanted. And I mean, I asked for some ridiculous stuff. Like there was a time when we were on the Banggood gravy train that, I mean, I got a remote control crocodile, I got a massager, I got, just all kinds of random stuff. Like I wasted way too much time browsing Banggood looking for stuff. And then and then eventually it goes to where, I asked for an LCR meter and they're like, well, we'll give you a Geiger counter, and it's lately I haven't been on the gravy train as much. They are going to send me some network testing equipment, which is kind of cool, but for the most part, like I don't think I'm in their graces anymore, which is good. Like I had a really good experience with Banggood. They've been really easy to work with. Didn't always give me what I wanted, but have been super easy about the videos and stuff like that. But yeah, I've gotten most of what I want from their site.
Yeah, same. But although I have like a very broad sort of interests, so they're a very broad website because I don't think you really care much for like RC cars and stuff. But if you did, they have like incredibly powerful speed controllers and motors and radios. And then on the other end, they have like lots of hardware tools. Like they have these cool little like chainsaw battery powered things, all sorts of cool stuff, lithium polymer batteries. They have tons of stuff, but yeah, I mean, I could still ask for more, but the thing is, what people don't know is also they limit us in dollar value, which is perfectly fine. But you start running out of things in that range that
Right.
you want, and I think once they were offering me stuff around $100, and I wanted something that was like $300, and they said they would take like $25 off of that if I wanted it. But it's like, so you're sending me $100 things, but you'll only take $25 off if I
Yeah.
want something bigger. And it's like, yeah, whatever.
There
I
was a
mean,
time when they told me that I could do up to 3 $200 items a month. But I think what actually happened was the first couple things I had for them, just like I sold a ridiculous number of like oscilloscopes and a couple other things. Just I have no idea why. Like I don't know what I'm talking about, but people liked my review, and I was learning as I was doing the review, so maybe people related to that. They just bought a ton of those things, and then they just sort of rolled out the red carpet, and then basically everything flatlined after that. But these gravy trains, whether it's PCB Way or any of these things, you never know when they're gonna start and when they're gonna end. And so I sort of have these goals to just to do a good job for them, but to also get the things that I really care about. So for me, it was, I know that I was never going to go out there and buy a function generator, or something like that. So I made sure that I got a function generator and a portable oscilloscope and all these other things that are just really nice to have pieces of lab equipment was kind of my goal. And there was only one that I didn't get, and that was like a quality LCR meter. And but other than that, I pretty much got all the really cool stuff from them.
they sent me a ton of cool stuff. I don't want to come off as I'm complaining at all. It's just funny how, and I think I know what happened. And I think we've had this discussion before, is that we were sent stuff to review and it was weeks or months before they would come back into stock. They had
Yes.
nothing in the entire website. And so they're like, well, you're not selling anything. We're not sending you anything. And it's like, but you don't have anything in
Yeah.
stock anyways.
I and that's yeah, like what's it called? Pile of Stuff reviewed that solder sucker that's kind of like the Hacko one, and looks like a decent unit and stuff like that. But it has not been in stock since he posted that video 4 months ago. Like it's never in stock because I want one. In fact, I want one just for the stand. I want the stand from that thing. I don't care about the solder sucker at all, but I want the stand from that solder sucker, and I'd love to compare it to the Hacko to see if they're in the same range. But yeah, it hasn't been in stock for months, and it's every time one of us does a video on it, people buy it like crazy, but then you won't see it for months.
And I think I have to explain something too to the people. When you go on Chinese websites, eBay, AliExpress, all those places, you get sort of like everything is rock bottom dollar. But Banggood is different. Their prices are very slightly higher than AliExpress normally. Like you can normally find an AliExpress seller that will sell it to you for a couple of dollars cheaper than Banggood, unless Banggood has a flash sale on it. Their flash sales are actually very good. So, for example, I have the second read-in RD6024 now that I have to review still. And there's been a holdup in that, but which is being solved. But I need to upgrade the AC to DC power supply that I use to feed those DC-DC converters, and they're like literally it's a 1,000 watt unit. If you're buying a 1,000 watt unit here in Canadian dollars, it's about 100 to about $120 on AliExpress. On Banggood, it was about $120 as well. Now it's on flash sale though, and now it's $84 with free shipping. So if you get it something on flash sale, it's actually a sale. Unlike AliExpress, where they're like 1% off, but then you can find sellers that'll sell it to you for that price normally, anyways.
Right.
So
And they're
Banggood
also
actually
faster
has
on
sales.
shipping too. A lot of times the stuff that you ship, or at least when I get it, like a lot of it is shipped from the US. So where AliExpress could be, they're getting a little faster. But my doorbell. Someone is at the front door. They, they'll get things in 6 days or something like that from Banggood, where AliExpress could be weeks.
Do you need a moment to handle the front door?
No, my people up front are doing it.
Siri, deploy the water gun.
I actually wanted to do that. That's I have a squirt button in my office, and the original plan of that was to put it on the front door so that I could shoot people out front.
You were working on that. Did that ever finish?
It's in my office. Yeah, I have the squirt button in my office, but I didn't do one to the front door.
Oh, someone else is working on a front door thing. It might have been a conversation I had with Gadget Reboot.
Okay.
It is what it is. So, yeah. Any closing thoughts aside from bringing up the fact that I promised to design you something and that I didn't do it yet?
No, speaking of AliExpress, one of the things I've been working on is a little investigation into them, and I got more stuff today, and I don't want to give every single thing away, but I have been having just an absolute rampant set of bad experiences with AliExpress, and I love them. I posted a video 3 years ago about my first 400 orders from AliExpress. Like, I make a lot of orders from AliExpress, but I've been having things like when I order Logic chips, I've been having something like 15% failure rates on the chips that I've been getting from there. And I bought a bunch of EPROMs, and they've been used. The stupid thing is, I can buy these chips and I can put them in my EPROM programmer, and instead of writing them, I can read them to see what was on there. And some of these things that I'm getting are being pulled out of motherboards that were from the early 2000s. So, I mean, they're selling things that are not just used, but very used, like 10 years old, 15 years old. I've had stuff relabeled. I got compact flash cards that had personal images on them already. It's been kind of unreal, the level of crap I've been getting from AliExpress lately.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where you kind of have to pick your poison with AliExpress. I am so tempted to throw some of my sponsorship money into lithium iron phosphide batteries, to make a nice little solar charge accumulator here. But I'm just so sketched out that I'm gonna get something that's either terrible or like completely worn out, or it won't show
Yeah.
up at all. But I mean, other than that, I haven't really had problems. Like all my 555 timers work. They're actually 555 timers. I have some
I
Logic
wouldn't be
chips
surprised
that
if they
work.
were pulled from something else though. Like if you went today and bought a 10-pack of 555 timers, I wouldn't be surprised if you looked at them under the microscope. They would have different fonts on them. They would have, they were just yanked out of something else. Like that's been kind of the experience that I've had. And so like even the EPROMs and stuff, like I they're so much cheaper than anywhere else that I have to, like, I can live with a 15% failure rating because I have the ability to test them. But I mean, if I didn't have that ability, it would be a nightmare. Because I've been making circuit boards and stuff, and you solder a chip into a circuit board, and you're kind of expecting it to work, and you're kind of screwed if it doesn't.
You got to socket everything at this point.
You do if you're going to use AliExpress stuff.
Yeah, I'm kind of like of that mentality that everything should be socketed anyways because I have enough like issues with my own
Yeah.
soldering. Like who knows? Or I'm not ESD safe here. I work on carpet and nothing's grounded. So I mean, I'm gonna zap something one day.
Well, and I think the thing is like the kinds of boards that I've been making, like when I build these boards for the computers and stuff, they have 10 and 15 chips in them. So I mean, all of a sudden the number of sockets gets like I just ordered 128 pin, 8 pin, 16 pin, 14 pin sockets, like 100 each, because I've gone through so many sockets in the last couple of months.
Yeah, I did that recently with probably about 20 of each or 40 of each, something like that. Because yeah, it's getting to the point where yes, the sockets sometimes are more expensive than the chips, but you can reuse the chips
Right,
multiple times. You can't reuse the sockets. I am not solder sucking
right,
a
right.
socket out.
Yeah,
Like there's no way.
yeah.
Oh well, it's been over an hour now, so yeah, I guess in closing thoughts, I guess I want to thank you for taking some time off your out of your busy day and out of your exercise regimen for your injury to come and celebrate 2 years of podcasting with me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's an honor, and again, congratulations. I've listened to every single episode, and they've all been worth it. Well, except for that one, but I won't tell you which one that one is.
And for the people listening, I have two big guests booked. So this was, I had three, but now I've got another Makers episode through. So now it's two more. I'm not sure the order that they're going to appear, but both guests are equally as awesome. Just one has more subscribers than the other. So you guys are definitely not going to want to miss that. However, if you are in the position to harass someone you know to come onto the podcast, let me tell you the answer is yes. So tell them to reach out to me. It's a lot less nerve-wracking when you know the answer is going to be yes than me sending emails into the void, especially like when I try to contact the bigger of the big fish. My email just disappears among thousands of people demanding tech support for an idea that someone posted a video in. Like people emailing William Osmond, like, how come my homemade X-ray doesn't work? you know there's no rhyme or reason to stuff like that. So go harass your favorite creator and have them contact me. And if you're wondering if I sent you an email already, I probably have famous content creator. So yeah, check your spam, it's probably there. And yeah, other than that, thanks again for listening, and thanks again, Another Maker, for literally taking some of your paid time away to do some volunteer work here on the podcast.
I'm honored.
And I hope everyone will go subscribe to Another Maker and maybe complain that his videos are too much about retro stuff. Or if you're into retro stuff, I guess you could just go watch. Thanks for listening, guys.